In a quiet-looking house, Amelia, a mother of twin babies, is seen preparing milk for one of her infants. Meanwhile, the other baby appears calm in a room. Amelia just checks on that baby, then leaves the room. Without her knowing, two strangers in another part of the house are monitoring the situation. Feeling the moment is safe, the woman heads to the baby's room. She takes one of Amelia's babies and brings the child to their car, waiting for her partner. Still unaware of the abduction, Amelia places the baby she is holding on the bed while she closes the window curtains. Quietly, the male perpetrator takes the other baby. Realizing what is happening, Amelia immediately chases after him. Downstairs, her eyes suddenly turn white, and she manages to overpower the culprit. She successfully retrieves her baby from his arms, but she has already lost the other baby, who is now in the car with the woman. Moments later, that baby is shown lying at the doorstep of an orphanage. This incident happened a long time ago. Now the scene shows one of Amelia's grown children, named Edward, receiving a phone call from the orphanage that once cared for him. Edward had asked the orphanage for any information about his origins. Unfortunately, the person on the other end of the line informs him that they have no new data or contacts. Back home, Edward's girlfriend, Riley, a nurse, brings him a birthday cake, although they aren't sure of Edward's actual birth date. Riley offers a gift in the form of a DNA analysis device that can help Edward discover who he truly is. Upon opening it and getting the DNA results, he finds the name Manuel Castro, who shares a 99% DNA match with him. Then behind him, Edward notices a frightening figure at the corner of the room. Edward immediately tells Riley about the test results, and he also receives a message in an app from Manuel Castro, suggesting they talk. They have a long conversation and find several similarities. Castro claims he once had a twin sibling who disappeared, abducted when they were both babies. His mother never stopped searching for that missing child. Castro believes Edward is that twin brother. In short, they arrange to meet. Accompanied by Riley, Edward flies to see Castro in a Portuguese city. After landing in Portugal, they rent a car for the rest of the trip. On the way, they stop and ask some locals for directions, showing a photograph of the house they intend to visit. Immediately, the woman's face grows tense. She mentions that this is Amelia's house. Out of nowhere, the older man rudely orders them to leave right away. Despite feeling confused about their unfriendly behavior, Riley and Edward return to the car and drive off, noticing the couple's grim stares. After a lengthy, tiring journey, they finally arrive at Amelia's large home. Before long, Castro, whose appearance is strikingly similar to Edward's, greets them warmly and gives them a tour of the house. Edward is shown pictures of their birth mother, as well as a portrait of their great-grandmother painted by an artist named Goya around the 18th century. When Edward asks where their mother is, Castro explains that she isn't feeling well today, but Edward can see her tomorrow. That night, Edward suggests to Riley that they find a nearby hotel, but she declines. She prefers staying in this house. In his sleep, Edward has a dream in which Riley is staring at him with white eyes. He wakes up to find Castro standing there, inviting Edward to meet their mother in her room. As the bedroom door opens, Edward is startled by his mother's appearance. She looks so different from the photographs he has seen. Nonetheless, Edward embraces her, releasing his deep longing, tears streaming in her arms. He later expresses his joy to Riley, but also admits to feeling fearful and uneasy about meeting his mother. In the main living area, while drawing, Riley is surprised by Amelia's sudden appearance. They chat in the living area, but there's tension in the conversation, so Riley excuses herself to go look for Edward. That night, in a bedroom, Amelia is shown speaking with Castro. They talk in Portuguese about Castro's fertility problem. Shortly afterward, Riley passes by and overhears their conversation. She translates Amelia's words to mean, "If you could have children, then you'd be my chosen son. I can't wait to feel young." But in fact, Amelia realizes that Riley has been eavesdropping. Riley quickly heads back to the room to see Edward. She reveals what she heard to him, along with her own discomfort at how Amelia appears to be sharing her bed with Castro. The following morning, while Riley is exercising, Amelia watches her secretly with a chilling gaze. A bit later, upon coming out of his room, Edward spots his mother speaking with an attorney, who explains a newly signed will in which Amelia's entire estate, valued at 65 million euros, will be bequeathed to Edward and Castro upon her passing. Edward is asked to sign the will, which is written in Portuguese, a language he does not understand at all. Meanwhile, Riley is on the phone with a friend in New York. But the poor reception causes the call to drop. She notices a box in front of her. Curious, Riley opens the box and finds several photographs, among them an image of a local woman carrying a baby and a picture of a family with their child. Suddenly, Castro appears, prompting Riley to quickly close the box. At night, Castro is seen at the edge of the forest, holding a knife and humming a Portuguese song. In her room, Riley awakens upon noticing the door slowly opening. She hears a baby crying, and she goes out to investigate. She follows the sound down a hallway, where she sees a strange figure from behind. She trails that figure, who continues moving until entering a room where the baby's cries seem to come from. Carefully, Riley opens the door and sees a rocking cradle. Suddenly she wakes up from her sleep, and at her side, a woman appears in the corner of the room, watching her with an unsettling demeanor, then rushing toward her. Riley jolts awake again. This time she is definitely out of her dream. Glancing at the corner of the room, she realizes her clothes are neatly arranged in her suitcase. Riley shares this strange experience with her friend Jay, who also finds it bizarre, advising her to leave that place at once. Riley agrees but needs to convince Edward. Edward, meanwhile, is searching for Riley. Suddenly its door opens, and Edward hears odd sounds coming from inside. He enters the place. Within, he is shocked to see a mysterious man. Terrified, Edward can't do anything, and the vision of a baby's shadow in the water causes him to lose consciousness. Edward is brought back to the house by Castro, who mixes droplets of some medication into Edward's drink, referring to them as a sedative. Then Castro instructs Edward to close his eyes. Edward experiences several visions in his mind. Startled, he opens his eyes. Castro reassures him that these are glimpses of the past, proving Edward's place in this family. Once again, Castro urges Edward to close his eyes. This time, Edward sees a woman with white eyes, a horrific figure covered in blood. When Edward opens his eyes, he sees Riley before him, but it isn't really Riley. It's Castro claiming that they possess special abilities. Meanwhile, Riley, out of curiosity, begins researching the house. She learns that the place is known as the home of a Portuguese witch who was believed to regain youth by consuming her own offspring. Riley confides in Edward that she feels very uneasy. She suggests they leave for a vacation, but Edward rejects the idea, leading to an argument, and Riley leaves on foot. Eventually, she arrives at the home of the woman they met earlier. That woman's name is Vera. She shows Riley a photo of her daughter with a man named Arthur, who looks exactly like Manuel Castro. It turns out they were the couple who took those babies in the beginning. In reality, Arthur is Edward and Castro's biological father. Vera's daughter once shared that Arthur's mother was a witch. She was involved in intimate relations with her sons, then gave birth to twin boys. One was used in a ritual to achieve eternal beauty. Even so, on that night, Arthur and his partner tried to rescue both babies. Sadly, Arthur did not succeed. He was caught and stayed in that house. Afterward, Riley decides to return and fetch Edward, who is still busy dancing. Her arrival interrupts a pleasant moment, causing Amelia to become angry with Riley. Once again, Riley expresses her discomfort and urges Edward to leave with her. Even though Amelia disapproves, Edward follows Riley. They can't use their car, though, because the garage door is blocked by Castro's vehicle, so they must walk to Vera's home on foot. Castro is shown leaving Amelia's house, knife in hand. After knocking on Vera's door several times, they get no answer. Riley chooses to climb in through the window. She picks up some pictures of Arthur and shows them to Edward. Next, they head back to pack. But Edward still seems reluctant to leave his newfound family. Consequently, Riley goes ahead to wait in the car. In the car, Riley gets a new message indicating a strange detail in Edward's DNA results. The sample shows a relationship within the same bloodline. While awaiting Edward, who is saying his farewells to Amelia, Riley opens the gate. She is shocked to discover a large sack at the doorway containing Vera's lifeless body. Spotting Castro in the distance, Riley quickly hides in the garage. When Castro arrives, she strikes him with a shovel. She nearly gets overpowered, but she manages to grab a hammer and land a blow on Castro's leg. Meanwhile, Edward lies in his room, where Riley approaches him seductively. In reality, it is Amelia. The real Riley, still fleeing from Castro, pries open the lock to a basement. Inside are rows of prison-like cells. Down one passageway she sees an older man. He is Arthur, Edward and Castro's father, still alive and begging for help. Emerging upstairs through a hidden door, Riley witnesses Amelia's true form, seeing her in an intimate act that appears intended to conceive a child for her ritual of staying forever young. Once Amelia has left, Riley returns to collect Edward. They try to escape, hiding from Castro. At one point, Riley knocks Castro off an upper floor. Amelia, seeing this, screams in alarm. Riley tries to help the injured Edward down the stairs, but both of them tumble to the floor. This gives Amelia an opportunity to attack Riley. With Edward hurt, he can do nothing but watch. Thankfully, the older man from the basement arrives and grapples with Amelia, giving Riley the time to get Edward out. Despite being stabbed repeatedly, the older man endures the pain just long enough for Riley and Edward to flee. They reach the car, and after several failed attempts, the engine finally starts. They drive away from that house. Meanwhile, inside the house, Castro slowly regains consciousness. He is not truly dead. Amelia greets his return with great relief. In the final scene, Amelia is shown back in her youthful state, caring for a newborn. Castro joins her, dancing together. It implies Amelia has just given birth to twins, using one baby in her ritual and keeping the other to raise to adulthood, continuing this tradition of bearing more children through that same close bond, so that Amelia may preserve her eternal youth. And with that, the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.